Some machines don't just do a job, they arrive from the future. While the world was still dragging choppers behind tractors, these forage harvesters were already driving themselves, cracking every kernel and hunting down hidden metal in the crop. One was built so well it outlived its rivals by 25 years. Another was so powerful its own maker was too scared to admit the real horsepower. These are 10 forage harvesters that were far too advanced for their time. Number 10. The Gehl Forage Harvester. Before the forage harvester could change farming, someone had to turn it from a rare, clever contraption into something an ordinary farm could actually buy. And that someone was Gehl. In 1942, the Gehl Company of West Bend, Wisconsin, became the first manufacturer in the world to mass-produce forage harvesters. That single decision took a labor-saving idea that had existed only in small numbers and put it on a production line, ready to roll into thousands of barnyards across the Midwest and Plains. But mass-producing the machine was only the start of Gehl's head start. Into the 1950s, the company introduced a self-propelled forage harvester powered by a Continental engine, which Gehl's own history describes as the first such machine in the industry, and it set new records for chopping capacity, handling high-moisture ear corn at rates topping 400 bushels an hour. Alongside it came Gehl's front unloading forage box, feeding a blower that could load a 100-foot silo faster than any homemade box ever could. Those high-capacity blowers and unloading boxes became industry standards. Then came the machine that truly earns Gehl a place on this list. In 1960, Gehl built what has been regarded as the very first efficient green chop machine. It ditched the crude hammer-type flail shredder in favor of more efficient curved flail knives, paired a 72-inch cut with a blower, and gave farmers a chopper reliable enough to run day after day, season after season. Here is the detail that says everything about how far ahead it was. The design was so good that these machines were still hard at work in the field into the mid-1980s, a quarter of a century after they were built. In an industry where equipment is usually outdated within a decade, a forage harvester still earning its keep 25 years later isn't just well made. It's a machine that got the engineering so right, so early, that the rest of the world spent the next generation catching up. Gehl didn't just build the future of silage, it built it to last. Number 9. The Fox River Tractor Self-Propelled Chopper. To understand why the Fox self-propelled chopper deserves a spot on this list, you have to understand the company behind it. The Fox River Tractor Company was founded in Appleton, Wisconsin on June 11, 1919 by the Cyberlick family. They started out building tractors which didn't go well, so they pivoted to silo fillers by 1923, and that pivot changed agriculture. Working alongside Professor Floyd Waldo Duffy of the University of Wisconsin, one of the true fathers of the forage harvester, Fox helped perfect the idea of a field machine that combined a silo filler's cutter head with a hay loader's pickup. Their first field-going harvester came together in 1931, and a prototype was sold to Brook Hill Farms in Genesee Depot, Wisconsin, in 1932. By 1936, they were selling production machines with pickup heads, and in 1941 they introduced a direct-cut single-row corn head. Then came the leaps that mattered. Around 1950, Fox rolled out a lighter design with quick-change attachments, the ability to switch between crops without a day of wrenching. And by 1960, Fox had done something almost no one else in the mainstream had managed. They introduced a self-propelled forage chopper. That is the part worth sitting with. In 1960, the vast majority of farms was still chopping with pull-type machines hanging off the back of a tractor. Fox was already offering a purpose-built, self-driving harvester. The company's reputation for heavy, well-built machines meant Fox choppers stayed popular with dairy farmers through the entire second half of the 20th century. Fox was sold in 1970, again in 1981, and one final time in 1986, when Fox forage chopper production ceased. But the fingerprints are everywhere. The machine that pioneered the pickup head, the field corn head, quick-change attachments, and an early self-propelled chopper laid the technical groundwork that giants like New Holland and John Deere would build empires on a decade or more later. Number 8. The Field Queen. If you want to name the single machine that proved self-propelled forage harvesting could actually work as a business, it's the Field Queen, and its origin story is pure grit, In the late 1940s in Kansas, alfalfa growers Joe Wetter and Ray Burt were unhappy with the tractor-towed choppers of the day, so they brought in a local welder and engineer named Vern Van Horn. The first version they built in 1948 was still pulled by a tractor, but it carried its own auxiliary engine, driving a Gehl chopper that blew crops straight into a following trailer. Ray Burt's mother suggested the name Field Queen, and it stuck. Then, over that same summer and the following winter, Van Horn did the thing that put this machine into the history books. He built a self-propelled version. It was powered by a 6-cylinder Waukesha engine mounted over the rear axle. Both axles came from Ford trucks. And the tires? They were salvaged from redundant World War II bombers, rebanded and repurposed for the field. This was a fully self-propelled forage harvester in mass production from around 1950, more than 2 decades before Europe's biggest names entered the game. The machines were an instant success. Field Queen quickly became a leader, not just in alfalfa drying but in harvesting equipment that could handle a wide range of crops. By the early 1970s, this Kansas company was already offering a machine with around 200 horsepower, an astonishing figure for the era, developed in partnership with the Hesston Corporation. To put that in perspective, in that period a 200 horsepower tractor was considered a monster. Field Queen was building a forage harvester with that kind of muscle. In late 1972, Hesston bought the company outright for roughly $4 million. And in 1974 and 1975, with its side dump and rear dump models, Field Queen was the largest forage harvester manufacturer in the world. Not bad for a machine that started life on bomber tires and Ford truck axles. Number 7. The New Holland, 1880. By the late 1960s, the self-propelled forage harvester was still a rarity outside a few pioneering American firms. Then, in 1968, New Holland introduced the 1880, and it helped turn a niche idea into a mainstream category. The clever part of the 1880 was how it was conceived. Rather than reinventing everything from scratch, New Holland took the proven chopping elements of a trailed harvester and married them to a combine-style drive axle, mounting the whole assembly on a self-propelled chassis. It was an elegant piece of engineering logic. Use the parts that already work and build a self-driving machine around them. This same basic approach, combining a trailed chopper's mechanism with a combine's running gear, was exactly how the early European self-propelled machines came together too. The 1880 delivered a real jump in throughput and muscle over what most farmers had been running, and crucially, it brought carbed versions into the picture. For an operator who'd spent years perched in the open, exposed to dust, chaff and weather all day, a carb wasn't a luxury, it was a transformation of the entire job. What earns the 1880? Its place here is timing and influence. It arrived at a moment when self-propelled foraging was still unproven for the average farm, and it became one of the machines that established New Holland as a genuine force in silage circles. It was followed by the roughly 200 horsepower 1890 in 1975, and the whole family of machines that grew out of it stretched all the way to the S2200 and beyond, dominating fields on both sides of the Atlantic through the late 1970s and 1980s. The 1880 wasn't the flashiest machine on this list, but it was one of the most important. It took a concept that daring pioneers had proven possible and packaged it into a machine that ordinary contractors could actually buy, run, and rely on. And in doing so, it helped write the template that the entire modern industry still follows. Number 6. The John Deere 5200 and 5400. For decades, John Deere, one of the most powerful names in all of agriculture, had built its forage reputation on pull-type cut-and-blow harvesters. Then, in 1972, Deere made a decisive leap. It launched its very first self-propelled forage harvesters, the 5200 and the 5400. This mattered because when a company the size of John Deere commits to a technology, it signals that the technology has truly arrived. The 5200 and 5400 formed the original lineup, and they could be fitted with a 3-row maize header for corn silage or a grass pickup unit for grass. Interestingly, they were also offered as open station machines without a cab. a choice that made more sense in the wide-open American Midwest than in the wetter, cooler conditions of Northern Europe, where these machines were genuinely rare in the early 1970s. These first Deere foragers were ahead of their time in a different sense than the homemade pioneers. Deere's contribution wasn't inventing the self-propelled concept. It was taking that concept and beginning the long process of industrializing it, refining it, and pushing it toward the technology-packed machines we know today. The updated 5440 and 5460, launched in 1977 and built in Ottumwa, Iowa, added an electric clutch to engage the feed rollers and front attachments. A small but telling step toward the button-operated, electronically managed harvesters that would follow. The lineage that started with the 5200 in 1972 ran through the 5730 and 5830 of the 1980s, and then took a massive leap in 1992 with the enlarged 6010 series, when production moved to Zweibrücken in Germany, and the flagship 6910 boasted a stunning 410 horsepower, later pushed to 445. But it all traces back to 1972. When one of farming's biggest institutions decided the future was self-propelled, the whole industry took notice, and the machines only grew from there. 50 years later, Deere would put a 1975 Model 5200 next to a modern harvester to show just how far that first leap had carried them. Number 5. The Claas Jaguar. Some machines are ahead of their time because they're rare and radical. The Claas Jaguar is on this list for the opposite reason. It saw the future so clearly that it became the single most successful forage harvester ever built, and it's still winning today. The German firm Claas launched its self-propelled Jaguar in 1973. At first, the company essentially motorized its trailed machines, taking the header and chopping mechanism from an existing model and mounting it on a self-propelled chassis. But what Claas started that year turned into one of the great success stories in all of farm machinery. The numbers tell the tale. The 10,000th Jaguar was built in 1994. The 15,000th followed in 1998, and the 20,000th in 2004. The 30,000th rolled out in 2011, displayed at the Agritechnica Farm Show in a special black livery, and the 40,000th appeared in 2019. By the mid-2020s, more than 45,000 Jaguars had been manufactured. Today, the Claas Jaguar is the most common type of silage harvester on the planet. Its dominance in the field was staggering. Of every forage harvester sold in Ireland, between 2000 and 2003, 60% were Claas Jaguars. Across 2005 and 2006 in the United Kingdom, the Jaguar held 41% of the market, while its nearest rival John Deere took just 23%. Why did it win so completely? Because Claas kept the Jaguar at the cutting edge decade after decade. A straight, efficient crop flow concept, outstanding kernel processing technology, robust drive systems, and legendary reliability. It's the rare machine that was advanced at launch and then simply refused to be overtaken, continuously reinventing itself to stay in front. The Jaguar earns its spot, not because it was a strange one-off, but because it correctly predicted what the entire world's dairy and silage industry would want, and then delivered it over and over for more than 50 years. When a machine defines a whole category for half a century, it was clearly built for a future everyone else was still trying to imagine. Number 4. The Hesston 7650 Field Queen. When Hesston bought the Field Queen operation in late 1972, it inherited not just a pioneering name, but a philosophy: build forage harvesters bigger and more powerful than anyone thought a farm could use. The Hesston 7650 Field Queen took that philosophy to an extreme that the market was still years away from catching up to. Consider the power plant. The 7650 was driven by a 257 horsepower Detroit diesel engine. Its sibling, the 7600, introduced in 1975 to replace the earlier Field Queen standard, ran a 210 horsepower Caterpillar 3208 V8. These were figures that dwarfed what most contemporary machines and most tractors could put to the ground. In an era when a 200 horsepower tractor was regarded as a genuine heavyweight, Field Queen was pushing well beyond that with a purpose-built chopper. This wasn't power for the sake of bragging rights. More horsepower meant more throughput, and more throughput meant a contractor or large dairy could bring in vastly more silage in the same window of good weather. The Field Queen models, including the side dump and rear dump versions, were built for scale at a time when scale in forage harvesting was only just becoming a serious commercial idea. The proof of just how far ahead this was. In 1974 and 1975, off the strength of these big machines, Field Queen stood as the largest manufacturer of forage harvesters in the entire world. Production ran from the original Field Queen division plant at Maize, Kansas, and later at Hesston's main factory into the early 1980s. The 7650 and its stable mates were essentially high-capacity harvesting for an industry that hadn't fully scaled up to demand it yet. They were the machines you bought when you were thinking a decade ahead of your neighbors. The mainstream wouldn't chase this kind of raw capacity until the horsepower wars of the 1990s and 2000s, but Field Queen was already there in the mid-1970s, quietly building the biggest, most powerful choppers money could buy. Number 3. The New Holland 1895. Everything on this list so far was about power, self-propulsion, or capacity. The New Holland 1895 earns its place for something more subtle and, in its way, more visionary. It was one of the first forage harvesters to protect the machine and the animals it fed from an invisible threat. Launched in 1977, the 1895 was the first New Holland forager offered with a built-in metal detector. To appreciate why this was such a leap, you have to understand the nightmare that tramp metal represents in forage harvesting. A stray bolt, a broken tine, a fragment of fence wire hidden in a swath of grass, any of it can get sucked into a cutter head spinning at ferocious speed. Best case, it wrecks expensive knives and shears. Worst case, that piece of metal ends up chopped into the silage, gets eaten by a cow, and causes hardware disease that can kill the animal. The metal detector solved both problems at once. Sensing metal in the crop stream, it could halt the feed rolls almost instantly, stopping the offending object before it ever reached the cutter head. It protected the farmer's investment in the machine and protected the herd's health in a single stroke. The core technology behind these early detectors, magnet and coil sensors built into the feed roll, was being patented in the mid-1970s, right as New Holland brought it to market on the 1895. This was electronic sensing on a farm machine at a time when most harvesters were purely mechanical beasts of steel and belts. It was a glimpse of the sensor-laden, self-monitoring machines to come. Foragers that today carry crop analysis sensors, sampling thousands of times per second. By making the machine aware of its surroundings, the 1895 pointed straight at the future of agriculture. Not just bigger and faster, but smarter and safer. Metal detection would eventually become standard equipment across the entire industry, but in 1977 on the 1895, it was a feature well ahead of the curve. Number 2. The John Deere 5730 and 5830. If too advanced for its time had a poster child, it would be the kernel processor, and the John Deere 5730 and 5830 were the machines that first brought Deere's version of it to the field. Here's the backstory that makes this so remarkable. The kernel processor was invented in the early 1980s in Ottumwa, Iowa, home of John Deere's forage harvester works. The concept is simple but brilliant. Place two-toothed rollers spinning against each other at slightly different speeds, with a gap of just a few millimeters between them right in the crop flow. As chopped corn passes through, every kernel gets cracked open. A cracked kernel releases its starch and nutrients so livestock can actually digest them. An intact kernel largely passes straight through the animal, wasting the crop's energy. The 5730 and 5830, which arrived in the mid-1980s, were notable for carrying Deere's first kernel processor, or corn cracker. They looked broadly similar to the earlier 5720 and 5820, but you could spot them by their green roofs and redesigned steering columns. Now here's the part that truly earns this machine its ranking. Despite being a genuine breakthrough in feed quality, the kernel processor did not become the norm in North America until roughly 15 years after it was introduced. 15 years. The technology was invented, patented by Deere, and put on real machines in the 1980s, and yet the market took a decade and a half to fully embrace it. The roll technology had actually been developed with European conditions in mind, where a shorter length of cut was targeted, and North America was slow to follow. That is the very definition of a machine ahead of its time. The engineers understood something about feed efficiency that the wider farming world simply wasn't ready to act on yet. Today, kernel processing is considered essential to quality corn silage, and every serious self-propelled forage harvester offers it. But the farmers running a 5730 or 5830 in the mid-1980s were already feeding better silage than most of their industry would for another 15 years. Number 1. The Krone BiG X. Our number one machine wasn't built by an old, established forage giant. It came from Krone, a German company that had spent the early 1990s deliberately narrowing its focus to grass and forage equipment. Then, on May 20, 2000, Krone stunned the industry by rolling out its very first self-propelled forage harvester, and it was unlike anything else on the market. They called it the BiG X, and the name was no exaggeration. The prototype, built through 1999 and finished in early 2000, was presented with a claimed 540 horsepower. But the truth was even wilder. The V8 Mercedes-Benz OM 502 engine under the covers actually produced around 605 horsepower. And the machine could travel at 40 kilometers per hour, making it a genuine high-speed road and field harvester at a time when that combination of size, power, and speed was almost unheard of. Here's the detail that captures just how far ahead this machine was. Krone was so worried the market would see its true power output as absurdly oversized that the company initially downplayed the numbers. Think about that. They built a forage harvester so powerful they were nervous farmers would reject it as excessive. According to the German agricultural press, the entire concept, a harvester of that size, reaching 40 kilometers per hour, with that much engine and all new electronics, was simply new at the turn of the millennium. The BiG X was praised by the trade press for a future-oriented design where, as Krone put it, form followed function. Its new electronics were brought online gradually as the machine was developed. When commercial production hit full stride in 2003, Krone offered the 605 horsepower BiG X V8 and the even more monstrous 780 horsepower BiG X V12 alongside its distinctive Easy Collect maize headers. That oversized gamble turned out to be a perfect read of the future. Within a few years, the whole industry was chasing exactly this: huge horsepower, high road speeds, and heavy electronic management. Krone would go on to build machines pushing well past 1,000 horsepower and sell thousands of BiG X choppers worldwide. The machine everyone feared was too big turned out to be the shape of everything that came next, the clearest case on this entire list of a forage harvester that arrived from the future. If you enjoyed this journey through forage harvesting history, let me know in the comments which of these machines surprised you the most and which forgotten pioneer you'd want to see next. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more deep dives into the machines that quietly changed farming forever.